SEO isn't dead, but it sure as heck has changed. Good morning, everybody. Today, Ruby and myself are discussing the impacts of what's happened with AI models and ChatGPT 5s and Geminis and Google search and all that stuff. And key takeaway is that SEO isn't dead. I think Rand Fishkin came out with a number that still Google searches are like 300 and some odd times more than AI searches. So that's a real thing. So if you're talking about how those things connect back to your customer, they're still Google searching. Like, straight up. Now, listening to a podcast guest was very smart to say that is true, but it really depends on the scenario. So he used a term that I'm starting to get a little tired of, which is if someone is old school, kind of me, but I get it, they're more likely to go to Google because it's a habit. I've been doing it for 25 years. It's a habit. It's definitely a habit. However, there is a world that's changing where that model is now shifting towards people using tools like Gemini. Gemini is now built in, where the AI search is built into a Google search. So there's that. More of that zero-click model, not trying to get off Google, using Google to stay on Google, to answer my question. Interesting. So that's a kicker for some SEO. However, structural changes to SEO around keywords, around how people are using the tool, very important. So this podcast guest made the case that if you are dealing with a technical buyer in B2B, they are way more likely to use a Claude, a ChatGPT, a Gemini, a Copilot, or whatever to do it, because their queries are going to be much more advanced, much more technically involved, versus where can I buy socks near me? Different. So the idea from an SEO perspective is, are we keeping one eye on the horizon here to say, okay, right now it's 300 plus times Google searches. Us old school folks are going to start changing our behaviors because we have to, whether we like it or not sometimes. And that's going to change how search works. So do keywords and domain authorities and meta tags and all that stuff still matter? Of course, yes, they do. And that's not going to change in the next 24 months. However, that shift towards things like how technical is my buyer, and does an AI experience make search more applicable to them? That's important. So going back to something I say always, do we know our customers? Really? Do we know how they behave, what they want, how they like to interact with us, what they need? Or are we pushing rocks up hills? And if we're doing SEO really well, and that search volume coming to our website is massive, and we're happy with that, and we need to convert the traffic better, okay, yeah, sure, totally. If we want to throw SEM in there, and now we want to do paid search and all the wrinkles and challenges and PhDs you need to do that well, sure, totally fine. But are we forsaking what's on the horizon, which is to say there's a whole world of buyers for whom Google is not going to be relevant. It's not going to be important to their lives when they come to find a tool like a ChatGPT. I'm just going to use that brand name because that's the thing that they want to interact with, because it gives them the data that they want in the shortest amount of time possible. So this is a call to action for anybody in B2B, well, anyone, anywhere, really, but mostly in B2B, to really pay attention to this. So if you're trying to be relevant to your customer, if you want to know what your cost of acquisition is on a digital platform, and you want to be part of a search, any search, on any platform, you need to know how this works. So whether it is understanding how SEO is implicating your website into a customer experience and a customer journey, great. Are you relevant? Are you interesting? Are you part of that brand journey for them? Or do they even know you exist based upon the pain points that they have? And if you don't know what those pain points are, start there. That's probably a good idea. If you do know, the rest of it is understanding the mechanics of this, and then understanding the behavioral overlay on top of that that says, hey, For these searches, Google's our buddy. For those searches, AI, we need to be relevant. We need to be part of that conversation. If you are not, you will not be. So, this is a piece of the puzzle to figure out in 2025 and beyond. But for now, if you don't know what SEO is, time to learn. If you don't know how to use ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, time to learn. This is not about anything more than being available and relevant to your buyer in a world where they have all the options in front of them. All right, Ruby says, work smarter, not harder. Understand which world you're living in, and it's different than it was yesterday. Make it better, make it easier for your customer to buy. All right, enough for today. Walking and talking with Ruby.